The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individuals participating in the show. All persons described or mentioned in the podcast should be considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. This podcast contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions along with adult language, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
On April 11th, 2001, a 20-year-old man steps out of his home in Skidmore, Missouri to place jumper cables into a shed. He never returns, and he is never seen again. What in the world happened to this young man? You're listening to the Mysterious Brews podcast, and tonight we bring you the case of Branson Perry.
A cold case from 2001 is getting national attention now after a tip reopened that investigation. It's the search for Branson Perry from Skidmore, Missouri. Fox 4's Jacob Sloan was at the scene of the most recent tip in Quitman. He has the latest information about the FBI's involvement now.
23 years later, the Nottoway County Sheriff's Department is investigating a site here in Quitman that wasn't a part of the original search in 2001. Branson Perry disappeared on April 11th, 2001. He walked out of his front door to return jumper cables.
And he has not been seen since.
That's Michael Kurz. He's a retired police officer who's been closely following the case since then.
They're looking at this case now as not as
Welcome to a deep, dark, dank, moist basement somewhere in the bowels of Georgia. Well, boys and girls, prayers for people in Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, all of them that has had the tornadoes rip through since the last time we talked. I know my genius son living in northeast Kentucky slept through the whole tornado outbreak. So if the big one ever comes, he won't know it.
There's worse ways to go out, man.
Oh, I know. I was asleep. What am I doing here?
Yeah. Is this a dream?
If you're not a member, we say this all the time, but if you're not a member of the Mysterious Brews big chat group, you should be, because Chuck Ball was letting them rip like tater chip yesterday. They had a hailstorm come through a couple of days ago, and he posted pictures of his daughter's 2007, I think, Hyundai, and the hail knocked off shattered two of the wind visors, and he said, "My daughter's car suffered tens of dollars of damage." But he did post a picture of the hail that had slid off the roof, and it looks like a giant pile of sand. That's how much hail they got. He said they were about the size of golf balls, and then after the hailstorm was over, there were 90-mile-an-hour straight-line winds. And he's north of Fayetteville. Up there near where Walmart's at.
At the Walmart's?
That's a Walmart's, yeah. We did get called out on our previous episode, and I almost said it, and I was like, no, everybody will find it hokey if I say it. Mr. George Collins, Patreon extraordinaire, said that nobody ever mentions that Ken McElroy was the basis for Brad Wesley from Roadhouse. Please tell me the boys mentioned it. And so I was like, no, we didn't, but we knew
We
it.
should. I was on my agenda because that's exactly where that movie from Roadhouse. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
That's who they based the character off of.
Yeah.
That guy was a jerk too.
Yeah, he was.
Have you seen the new Roadhouse?
I have not. I have to wait and watch it as a guilty pleasure because my wife refuses to watch it with me. She does not like Jake Gyllenhaal, and she can't stand Conor McGregor. So
How do you not like Jake Gyllenhaal?
I don't know. She's got this thing, man. I don't know what.
Dude, he was Donnie Darko, for God's sakes. If you haven't seen that movie, golly, what are you doing? Go watch that. If you like mysteries and hot, it's a good one.
He was also in a guy.
Completely understand why he wasn't like Conor McGregor.
Yeah. He was in a Guy Ritchie film, and I can't ever remember the name of it, but basically his interpreter is left behind when he gets hurt. His interpreter saves his life, gets him through like Taliban-controlled Afghanistan.
That's a newer movie.
Yeah, I thought that was a very good movie. He was very good in it too, but my wife cannot stand him.
Oh wow, that's wow.
Yeah,
The new one would be much better if they didn't call it Roadhouse and didn't let everybody know that it was a remake of Roadhouse. They could have just said, "Oh well, it's just similar." But no, they ruined it because everybody's going to compare it to the original, and you can't compare to the original.
No, that was cinema gold.
Yeah, Patrick Swayze in his prime, Sam Elliott.
Yeah,
come on, man. Well, the saga of the crazy lady.
I was about to say, do we have an update?
Oh, there's updates, brother. This morning, she learned how to sneak around the camera. The camera didn't pick her up, but she was outside with a damn pickaxe trying to cut the wire to the air conditioner.
Yours?
This morning. My sister's box one.
Jeez.
I don't know if it'll. I've never used Zoom on my phone, so I'm on Zoom on my phone. I'll see if it'll play the video and if you can hear it. I don't know. It might mute me, but if it doesn't, this was Sunday at 11 p.m. and we are in bed. She approaches the front door camera and see if you can hear her. Goddamn bitch. Did you hear it?
Yep.
Yeah. She just walks up to the camera, says it, and turns around and walks back. Here, one more time. And like, done nothing to this woman. Nothing. We avoid her at all costs.
Well, with a pickaxe, a window unit?
Yeah, that was this morning.
I think that's grounds for the popo be called.
I know, man. Everybody's telling me that. I'm just like, I don't want to get the law involved.
Because it's a whole shit show. I understand.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah, I understand your reservations. I do.
I contacted the grandson the last time she screamed in the camera, and he's like, "Oh, I'll get my mom to handle it," but they ain't handled the damn thing.
Yeah, I don't envy you. That's for damn sure. Not
not
on that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I do envy you for, Coach.
Yeah, but no, I don't want to get the law involved because it's going to be a whole thing, and she needs help. She doesn't need to be arrested. She just needs help. There needs to be some sort of caretaker that comes to her and makes her take her damn medicine when she's supposed to.
Yeah, like gunpoint.
Yeah, because when she got out of the hospital the last time she got arrested for trying to hit the other neighbor with a pickaxe, she came home. She was relatively normal for like 2 weeks because they got her meds straightened out. But it's insane, man. And
sad state of affairs.
I got another video where they're arguing. My sister was going to work and they're arguing in the front. And she's like, "You need to stay off our property." She said, "I don't have to stay off. You don't own it. I can go wherever I want." I was like, "No, we do own it." That's the only reason why I'm living here is because it's purchased and there's no rent, no mortgage.
Joke's on you, lady.
Yeah. Like, golly.
Well,
and then did I play you the one where she was get raped in prison?
Yeah, she threatened Coach that he did not stay anal retentive.
Did I play it on the podcast?
No.
Okay, hold on. Let me do that one, and then we'll move on.
You've been warned.
Go to prison. So you hope you enjoy prison because that's where you're going to go. Oh, here we go.
I don't think that one played there, Slick.
Did it not play?
No. Just take Coach's word for it, though.
But she said, I hope you enjoy prison because that's where you're going to go, and they're going to make you go, what?
She did. I heard it. Fun times at the old Casa de Coach.
Like, yeah, that was in her damn moo-moo in my backyard.
And there I was. I said, don't look, Ethel. It was too late.
Too late. She done got herself an eyeful. All right. Yeah, she done. She told me I was going to get raped in prison.
They going to make you go, wee, wee. That was pretty bad, boys and girls. Pretty bad.
I'll tell you this much. If I don't ever want to go to prison, but I promise you this much. I'm not getting raped in prison. Might get my ever-loving ass whooped a bunch of times, but I'm not getting raped.
It'd be like Shawshank, where he says the last thing, there's 7 nerves or something, pry my jaw open or something like that, and
Right.
they beat the shit out of him.
Oh, yeah. I'm telling you.
All right, boys and girls, we're back in Skidmore. Now, depending on what you read, there's 9 major cases in Skidmore, and that's kind of misleading because there's really 4 if you count Ken Rex McElroy, and then the one we're going to do today, Branson Perry. There's 2 other ones, but they're solved, and we'll kind of get into those 2 at the end of this episode. And I have my own theory about why shit goes down in Skidmore, but we'll see. Anyway, so Branson Perry was born on February 24th, 1981. His parents are Becky Kleino and Bob Perry. Now, Branson, born and raised, never left Skidmore. And if you have not listened to our Ken Rex McElroy episode, first of all, why are you listening out of order? Second of all,
yeah, seriously. you'll get the saga of the crazy lady in the wrong order. You gotta. Yeah. This is a developing story.
Yeah, this is a week by week newscast.
Yeah, this is a saga.
So if you did not, and you just found this because you wanted to hear about Branson Perry, Skidmore is perched on a hill above the Nottoway River, surrounded by cornfields in northwestern Missouri. And when I say northwestern Missouri, I mean it's up there in the very corner, kind of like Dade County is in Georgia.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, it's up there. You literally can, because when I was researching Rex, they kept saying that he could jump into Nebraska and Kansas. I'm like, Jesus, where's he at? And then I found the county, and I'm like, well, they ain't lying. So it's right there. So most residents of Skidmore work in the farming industry, and those that don't travel outside of Skidmore to work in factories that are nearby. Now, Branson came, I don't guess is a good way to state it, but his parents divorced while he was still in high school. And it was not a nasty divorce, and he had a younger brother. And so the younger brother went to live with mom, Becky, and he decided to go live with his dad, Bob. And Bob and Branson were pretty close. They loved to do stuff outdoors together, like fishing and hiking. But Bob had some health problems, and I think, and a lot of people have theorized that Branson kind of stayed with Bob because he felt like he needed to keep an eye out on him. And Branson, got into training in martial arts and specifically Hapkido, so him and his dad had that in common as well. For those of you that don't know what Hapkido is, it has been described as a hybrid Korean martial art. It is a form of self-defense that employs joint locks, grappling, throwing techniques, kicks, punches, and other striking attacks.
Ooh. That sounds dangerous.
Whips and chains and things.
Oh, my word, my heavens.
It also teaches the use of traditional weapons. All right, I'm going, my squirrel brain's taking a left. So that I can't think of the kid's name, but he's infamous. He went viral for. I don't think he went to school nowhere. He's real country, and so there was somebody has stitched it with after my country ass has 4 drinks. I don't think I sound like this, but he's country as a turnip green. But anyway, all right, back to it. So that Hapkido also teaches the use of traditional weapons in the martial arts as well. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but I think everybody in Hapkido is a black belt, and then there's certain degrees. So it's not like your other disciplines where you start off with a white belt and you work your way up.
God forbid you got to start at the bottom.
I know. Just everybody's a general. Perry. Branson graduated Nottoway Holt High School in 1999 and was employed by a roofing company and a traveling petting zoo. And I bet you're thinking, damn, those are 2 different career choices. But he was actually a maintenance man for the petting zoo. So it kind of fell into his kind of roofing business. He was carpentry and building stuff and patching stuff. So it's not that big of a difference. But when I first read that, I was like, dear Lord. But anyway, so Perry was 20 years old in 2001 and was living with Bob on West Oak Street in Skidmore. So Wednesday, April 11th, 2001 was the last day that Branson seen. He was reported missing by his family, and depending on which report you read, this was either 5 or 6 days after he disappeared. Now, a lot of shade has been thrown to the Nottoway County Sheriff's Department over the years, starting with the Ken Rex McElroy case, and then I've seen some people that were pissed at him about the Branson Perry case. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. The sheriff at the time that Branson disappeared, he's a stand-up guy. I've seen very different interviews concerning different cases that he was involved in while he was there. He's no bones about it. He's going to do what's right by the people of Skidmore. Now, with that said, you can't expect them to be Johnny on the spot if you don't report someone missing immediately. So they're already behind the 8 ball once they know he's missing. It's been 5 or 6 days. So either way, as far as we can tell, the Sheriff's Department starts their missing person investigation on Tuesday, April 17th, 2001. Now, I could not find a specific time that Branson was last seen. All I could find was that it was on Wednesday, April 11th, sometime in the afternoon. So Bob, on Wednesday, April 11th, is in the hospital and is due to come home very soon. There was a lot of activity reported at his and Branson's house, and I'm under the impression this was just due to Branson and Branson's grandmother, Joanne Stinnett, trying to get people to come to the house and get it cleaned up so that Bob could come home and not have any stress. Now, Grandma is not doing a whole lot, but by God, she's handing out orders like a general. And that's what she should do. You know, she's there. She's making sure everybody's toeing the line, and then she'll come back and check on them. And you don't want to disappoint Grandma. You don't want No. You ain't.
Definitely not.
She ain't going to tell you to clean the cupboards and then come back and find they're not clean. She'll whoop your ass.
Damn straight.
Now, there's some discussion about what was wrong with Bob's car, but basically it was not drivable, as in you couldn't just get in it and start it. His alternator was going out, and so either Grandma or Branson or Bob had called 2 men to come replace the alternator. Gina Crawford, who is a good friend of Branson's, is also at the house helping clean, and she's mentioned by name in almost every article that covers Branson's case. The 2 men that were working on the car, however, are not named. They're always unnamed I think the way I saw it referenced was two unnamed men who had mechanical expertise. And then one article said they were local mechanics, which I ain't ever found a mechanic that would walk to your house and replace the alternator. But Skidmore does only have 200 something people, 350 people when this went down. So things might be different out there in Missouri. Either way, there's two men. We don't know their names. They're just working on the car, trying to make sure that it is in working condition by the time Bob gets home. It could be just two people that heard that Bob was down on his luck and kind of stopped by when they saw that they were cleaning up the house and said, hey, is there anything we can do to help? And they're like, in general conversation, just mentions, hey, the car's got a bad alternator. And they're like, hell, man, we can replace a bad alternator. So it could be that easily explained. So on the afternoon that everybody's cleaning, you've got Joanne, Grandma, and Gina, the friend. They're working inside the house, and according to Gina, it's around 3 p.m. when Branson is also in the kitchen. They're both cleaning, and he opens up a kitchen cabinet. He doesn't say anything. He takes something out of the cabinet and walks outside. And so Gina looks up and sees Branson talking to the two men working on the car and says, well, she raises the window and she's basically asked Branson, what are you doing? So I think it went down like this. Hey, ass, you're not done in here. What are you doing? I'm not doing this by myself.
I can see that easily.
And so he tells her in no certain order that he's going to put some jumper cables back in the shed. And then he states, I'm going out for a bit, but I'll be back soon. So Gina watches him go to the shed and then watches him walk back towards the house, and he's leaving on foot. So Branson had a habit of visiting his father every evening while Bob was in the hospital. So the next day would be April the 12th. Joanne, Branson's grandmother, is at the hospital visiting Bob. And during her visit, Bob mentions that Branson never came by to see him the night before, on that day that he put the jumper cables in the shed. So after visiting Bob, Joanne goes back to the house to check on Branson. When she gets there, it's around noon, and she finds all of the doors to the house are open. She finds the house is empty, and there's no sign of Branson. She states that she walks through the house and nothing seemed to be missing or out of place. She specifically checked for some of Branson's personal belongings to see if they were missing or out of place, and none of his personal belongings are out of place or missing, like his wallet was still there. So just to put this in a nice, neat little ball for you, Branson's last seen putting jumper cables in the shed, and this is where everybody jumps on this case, because if you see Instagram reels or TikTok videos, it talks about Branson Perry is last seen putting saying he's going to put jumper cables in the shed, and then he disappears. Now, Gina sees him take jumper cables to the shed, and then she sees him walk back without jumper cables, and then that's when they have the exchange of, I'm going out for a bit, I'll be right back. And that was on Wednesday, April the 11th. He never says where he's going. He just, I'm going back. I'm going to be out for a bit, I'll come right back, which leads you to believe that he's not planning on being gone very long, or he's going to pick something up, going down to the corner gas station and get a drink. I don't know. Either way, fast forward 5 or 6 days, Branson is has reported missing on April 16th or 17th by both of his parents, Bob and Becky. So that's the gist of the story when it comes to what you can find in most news articles. What's missing from the story in the news articles and some of the reels that you see is Branson leaves the house and the two men working on the car are still there, and Gina's still there. None of those three individuals know where he's going. Now, Joanne, Grandma, says that when she gets to the home less than 24 hours later, after hearing from Bob that he never came by to visit him at the hospital. He's gone. The house is unlocked. The doors are open. So the question is, when did the people leave the house the day before, and when did Joanne leave, Grandma? So when was the last person that left? Did they lock up? Now, the hospital's only, well, I say only 15 miles away. But that's like a 19 to 22 minute drive, according to Google Maps. So he left the house walking. We know he's not going to walk 19 or 22 miles to see his dad. And also, if he was going to walk to the hospital, that's not returning in a bit. We know he didn't take Bob's car because, A, the two men are still trying to put the alternator on it. And apparently, from, well, I guess witness, not testimony, but statements, the two men leave the property sometime after Branson leaves. So I would say within an hour. Now, the way the case, like I said, is usually told is a young man named Branson Perry tells a friend, I'm going to take some jumper cables to the shed, and he vanishes into thin air forever. 2 weeks later, these jumper cables magically appear in the shed.
I saw that. I saw that on one YouTube video where they mentioned that the jumper cables come back.
Well, here's the thing. Apparently, they were not there before or until that point of that version of the story. And that's what gets everybody's attention. And here's the problem with that. It's kind of like the Brian Schaefer story. And if you don't know the Brian Schaefer story, he's the medical student that walked into a bar in Ohio, True Crime Garage.
Ugly Tuna Saluna.
Right. True Crime Garage has done like 5 or 6 episodes on it because it's a hometown case for them. But it would be kind of like us saying that Brian Schaefer walked into a bar and vanished into thin air, and then we didn't discuss any of the details. So, and it's kind of like that once you start looking at Branson's case. Because early on in the investigation, there was a theory that maybe he hitched a ride out of town, but his family and friends said that they had never known Branson to hitchhike. And that pops up the question of, did he have his own vehicle? Well, yeah, he did. According to the Charlie Project webpage on Branson, it states that he owned a van, and that van was in fact found parked in front of the home as he's walking away that day. So he had transportation. Now, we could probably say that it was at least there when his grandmother came over on the 12th because she goes in to check to see if he's there. That would, if the van's there, that's going to lead her to believe that he's still there. We don't even know if the van was in working condition. Some articles state that it was operational. Some say it wasn't. Who knows? So the one question is, where would Branson go without getting into his vehicle? So we know now that he does own a vehicle. We know that he's 20 minutes-ish away from the hospital, and he visits his dad every day while his dad's there. So where is he going? Was he just like tired of working and he's like, hell with this, I got to get away from people. I need to walk down here, get something to drink and a snack. Is there a coffee shop? Is there some kind of greasy spoon he can go get like a snack from? Who knows? The two guys working on Bob's car have been interviewed by authorities, and I believe they were cleared pretty quickly. And according to them, they were told that Bob was due to be released from the hospital on the day that they are replacing the alternator, or at the very latest that next morning. So it would appear that Branson was going to pick Bob up from the hospital in Bob's car and not Branson's van. And people hang on that as well. But you have to think, depending on Bob's condition, it's going to be a lot easier to get into a car than it is to get into a van. Now, there's the other people at the house that day he went missing. Was, like I said, Gina and Grandma Joanne. Now, there's certain armchair sleuths out there that have thrown some shade at Granny Joanne. And what we have going on probably, and this is just my theory, is that she was in fact there that day, like I said, handing out marching orders on what needed to be done, and then she left before Branson left. In a later interview with Branson's mom, Gina, she states that we only have one person telling us the story of Branson going missing, and that's Gina. I'm sorry. That's not Gina. His mom's name's not Gina. His mom's name is Becky. I'm getting my women confused. So Gina is the only person that is telling this story of what went down leading up to him walking away. And her last name's Crawford. So Gina's account is that she saw Branson retrieve something from a kitchen cabinet. She believed that he was trying to hide it from her as he was pulling it out of the cabinet. She then states just a few minutes later that she sees Branson talking to the mechanics and not helping her clean. And so she asks him, hey, what are you doing? And that's when he tells her that he's going to take these jumper cables and holds them up to the shed. And then I'm going to go out for a bit. Now, Branson's mom in this same interview says that Gina and the two guys working on the car all say that they left that day as soon as they finished working on the car, and Gina left as soon as she finished cleaning the house. And by the time they left, Branson had not returned. So one would assume that the two men working on the car finished up before Gina and left, and then she finishes cleaning whatever she's cleaning, and she leaves. Now, the question is, when Gina leaves, is Bob's car functional because the two men had left, or did they run into some kind of difficulty and it was more than just an alternator?
More importantly, though, what did he take out of the cabinet? What could have possibly been stashed away in the kitchen? You know?
That's what I don't understand either. And it would be in his dad's house. So I don't know.
It's just, that's just a terrible hiding place. Out in the open. I would think of somewhere better.
Oh, I would too.
Well, that's just why it's so mysterious, is what it could have possibly have been. What could have been so secretive that it's hidden in plain sight, yet important enough to be stashed away and hidden as he takes it out?
I don't know. There's some theories out there, and we'll get to it at the end, but I'm not 100% sure. So Branson's mom says that the shed was on the side of the property, and here's the thing. If you look at a map of Skidmore, where the houses are at, not the main street, it's your typical Midwest town. It's little blocks, running north, south, east, west. But Bob actually owned a double lot. And there's a documentary out there that we're going to talk about at the end of the episode. It shows the lot, and there was two sheds out there, but they're in the back. So think of the house, and then directly behind the house would be one lot, and then to the right would be this spare lot that he owns, and those two sheds are on that spare lot. So it's kind of behind the house to the right. Branson tells Gina, I'm going to put these jumper cables back in the shed, and then I'm going to leave for a bit. I'll be back in a few minutes. Turns, walks into the ether, basically, after he comes out of the shed. His mom says that the jumper cables were typically kept on the porch, so the shed comment about the cables is strange to her. Gina said that one of the guys working on the car at some point after Branson had left came into the house, went to the same cabinet that Branson took something out of. According to Gina, this guy too behaved strangely when she saw him looking in that cabinet. And that's the only...
Could Branson have been leaving something in the cabinet?
That's what I'm wondering. But that's the only time that's ever mentioned. It's only that one article.
Suspicious.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, suspicious.
That's
weird.
weird. So Branson's family says not only was Branson's van found parked at the house, but they found all of his personal belongings inside the home, including his wallet. Granny Joanne's statement about finding the doors to the house open is also odd. After some fine detective work on my part, I found where Gina stated that she did, in fact, close up the house when she left. What is not said is whether she locked it. But I would think she would lock it. If Branson hadn't returned, she's not going to just leave everything that Bob and Branson both own unlocked. And the reason she's not going to do this is because during this time, Skidmore is in a hell of a cycle of the town basically being a meth manufacturing for the county. I saw where they had stated there was 11 meth houses in Skidmore. You can almost throw a baseball twice across the whole town. So for 11 houses to be manufacturing meth, that's a big deal. So and it's not like people don't talk in Skidmore. Again, if you hadn't listened to Rex's episode, you need to go back and listen to it. So now the question is, did Branson come home later that day and then go out again, or did something happen when he came back to the house and no one was there? So another article states that not only did Joanne state that all the doors were open when she got there that next day, so this all goes down. Branson disappears on the 11th. So Granny Joanne shows up on the 12th. She says not only on the 12th is all the doors open, she said the stereo in the house was blaring music. So another oddity. But let's circle back. Let's circle back to them jumper cables. So we have Branson's mom stating that the jumper cables were kept on the porch, and she found it odd that he was going to put them in the shed. Now, if you will take a deep breath and not put your tinfoil hats on, it makes sense that they're on the porch if Bob's car had a bad alternator. Because if you don't know how to change the alternator out, you can jump it from the battery to start the car. Now, that's only a temporary fix because basically you're running the power of the car off the battery. So maybe Branson was out there talking to the guys and they're like, yeah, man, we're going to have this thing wrapped up. The alternator's going to be new, brand new. It's going to be running. And he's like, okay, fuck it. We're cleaning up. So I'm just going to go put these jumper cables back in the shed where they belong. So the weird thing with the jumper cables always been the reason why does this one detail stick out and people hang on it? Well, the obvious answer is that when you search for Branson's case, you find that supposedly they were not present in the shed when people started to look for them after they noticed that Branson was missing. Now, it could easily be explained away as the two guys replacing the alternator needed some jumper cables and took them. And after they used them and were back near the house, they go back and put them in the shed. And it could be that as Branson's walking out from putting them in the shed, one of the guys is like, hey, man, do you mind if we borrow those jumper cables? And Branson's like, no, but they're in that shed back there. It's not locked. Just get them and then put them back when you're done. Could have been easily explained that way. So remember, Branson allegedly tells Gina he's putting them in the shed. If that's the case, it could easily be solved by just going and finding the two guys and being like, hey, dudes, did you borrow some jumper cables? Did Branson tell you that it was okay to get some jumper cables? Did you have them for a couple of days and then put them back? That whole part of the story could be solved real easily. But anyway, and everybody's like, well, they want to remain anonymous. Well, Jesus Christ, you're not asking for their blood type. You're just asking, did you borrow some jumper cables? So maybe Branson puts these jumper cables away and people are looking for them and they're not where they normally are stored. And then
So the YouTube video that I watched that mentioned it said that the jumper cables were left on the engine of the car. But I couldn't find anything else that said that. Now, that would be super suspicious. But again, you can't really trust YouTube pages, can you?
Well, I don't know. I mean, this case is so weird in the sense that depending on what you read and who you talk to, you get another story. And I don't understand that whole line of thinking because, to be honest with you, Gina Crawford is the only person that should be interviewed. And if she says it, and then you have no reason to not believe her, I don't know. But again, go find the two guys. Supposedly authorities know who they are. They're not releasing their names because those two guys don't want any association with anything shady going on in the town. I totally get that. But as authorities, go back and ask them, hey, fuckers, what's going on with the fucking jumper cables?
Yeah, I don't understand why they wouldn't talk to him at least. It's a simple conversation, simple as, no, man, we had nothing to do with it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's check a box. Why is this going crazy now? My computer's acting a fool. Hold on, we're having technical difficulties. It's close. Somebody could have died. All right. Now I've lost my damn place. Sons of bitches.
Son of a gun. It's like playing cards with my brother's kids or something.
I know it.
Nerve-wracking sons of bitches.
Okay, so I think I got all that. Got all that. Yeah, okay, so here we go. So the problem is that there's zero physical evidence and zero information that is pointing law enforcement in the direction of where Branson Perry could be. Now, the authorities were behind the 8 ball from the beginning. Remember, I told y'all they didn't know he was missing for 6 or 7 days. So Bob was scheduled to be released on the night of April 11th, but that gets changed at the last minute. Bob stayed at the hospital a little bit longer than people expected, and this could be the reason that Branson was not reported missing sooner. However, Grandma Joanne goes to the house and can't find him the next day. So you would think she would let Becky and Bob both know, hey, I don't know where Branson's at. His van's out front, and all this stuff's inside, but I don't know where he's at. Now, there's also no mention of Branson having a computer. There's no mention of him having a cell phone. So did he have any way of communicating with anybody once he left the property other than a payphone? That's a great question. Bob said that on April the 8th, Branson told him a story, and because of the seriousness of the story and because of Branson's tone, Bob believed it to be true. Branson told his dad he was hanging out with a neighbor, a guy named Jason. Now, this is actually on April the 7th, 4 days before Branson disappears. Branson tells Bob that Jason gave him a pill and the two engaged in some sort of sexual activity together. Bob says he was furious because Jason was older than Branson, and Bob felt, based on Branson's reaction and how he told the story, that Branson was taken advantage of and victimized by Jason. Bob felt like Jason drugged his son and took advantage of him. Bob said he was pretty sure that his son had some homosexual tendencies and probably explored that during his life, but since he took some sort of drug, that Branson could not really consent to anything. The word rape has been mentioned in some articles with regard to this encounter with this guy named Jason. Now, here's the thing. Branson was 20 at the time. He's an adult. Now, he truly could have been a victim. He could have been roofied or told, hey, man, this is just a little, whatever, it'll make you feel good. And then he has no control. He doesn't, one of those situations. But again, he's an adult. He can do whatever the hell he wants to do. So the other lead comes from basically the same story about this neighbor, Jason. And Bob tells detectives that maybe because of what transpired with Branson, that maybe Branson was actually looking for some help from a friend when he walked off the property. Now, Branson did have a longtime friend that he was close to that lived out of state. And Bob's thinking, since he's missing, that maybe he went there. The Nottoway Sheriff's Office were made aware of both of these situations concerning this Jason character. They knew this very early on, and from everything I can find, both angles were fully investigated and nothing came out of either situation. Now, at the time of Branson's disappearance, Skidmore was experiencing a higher than normal drug problem. And I've already touched on that a little bit about the 11 meth labs in that little town. At some point in the investigation, we have a psychic, not Dionne Warwick, but an actual psychic enter the equation. I'm not sure if this psychic was invited by investigators or if they offered their services. Now, people have a problem with psychics because sometimes you get a piece of shit that will see vulnerable people that are experiencing the loss of a loved one and prey on them. And then they're like, I've got some information about where your loved one could be found, but I'm going to need some money. So,
yeah, it's like that one lady that used to be on all the talk shows, Sylvia something.
Yeah.
She like missing daughter. Mom's on there with a missing daughter, and she's like, I see that she's wet. She has water in her lungs. She drowned. And then like 5 years later, they found the girl alive.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, but here's the thing. And there are certain psychics out there that will get, I don't even know if you can call them psychics. The ones that I'm referring to, there's such a huge stigmatism with the word psychic that maybe these empaths, maybe a better way of talking about it, they get this overwhelming sense of dread, or they see something in a dream and then they see something on TV and they're like, oh shit, that kind of lines up. And they kind of contact authorities and they're like, look, you can take it with a grain of salt, whatever you want to do. But I've had these visions in the past. I just wanted to let someone know, have y'all looked here or have you talked to this person? But you also have these families that are extremely vulnerable and extremely desperate for any type of help. And sometimes these families reach out to a psychic as a last-ditch effort. One thing that is crystal clear in Branson's case with his parents and his grandmother and Gina, they all loved Branson to death, and they were all desperate for answers. So why not explore, if that's the way it went down, every angle and contact a psychic? So regardless of how the psychic was contacted, the psychic tells Branson's parents, quote, I can see your son has been murdered. He was tortured. He suffered a long, brutal torture before he was killed. The psychic refused to go into details about what actually happened to Branson because they didn't have the heart to tell the family. Now, with Skidmore being a small town, it may be a case where the residents are not as open-minded about one's sexuality if Branson did explore those tendencies, like Bob said, as the rest of the country. So there is a possibility you could be dealing with a hate crime. So Branson is a white male who was 20 at the time he went missing, and that would make him roughly 44 years old today. He was 5'9" tall, weighed 155 pounds, with an athletic build. He has blonde hair, blue eyes, and wears his hair typically short. He also has a small faint scar on the upper part of his right cheek and a small scar on his left knee. It was stated that he was possibly wearing size 32 shorts, a size medium or large t-shirt, and a necklace with leather trinkets or chains with some arrowheads on them. Branson does have a medical condition, a racing heart condition, and he's also allergic to penicillin. Now, if you research Branson's case, it leads you to another case, and depending on what articles you read, it is either tied directly to Branson's case, or you have an extreme, not if you have, you do have an extreme piece of shit in this other case. We just don't know if the guy's lying. So 20 years ago, and after several years, the FBI ran a project called Operation Candyman. And the basic goal of Operation Candyman was to identify and round up as many as possible child pornography collectors, traders of, sellers of, suppliers of, and makers of all over the internet. This operation led to dozens of arrests. When they identify these pervy persons via their computers, they go to their homes and they serve a search warrant and they go through their things. And most importantly, they go through their computers and their communication logs. So one of these sick fucks that they uncover is a man named Michael Adam Davidson in 2002. Mikey the Perv was a medical student in Alabama, and he would later plead guilty to multiple charges of receiving and attempting to receive images of child pornography.
Hey, let me interrupt you before you get too much into him. Did I ever tell you that my little podunk hometown has a child pornography sniffing dog?
How?
How crazy is that?
How do you sniff for that?
That's what I said. They're not necessarily trained to sniff out child pornography, but what they are trained to do is there's a certain chemical that helps preserve something when it comes to hard drives. And it's on every single solitary type of hard drive, a thumb drive, a zip drive, external hard drive, internal hard drive, whatever. So they bring the dog in to smell for that. And the officer was telling me the last time they used that dog, they found like 4 or 5 flash drives full of child pornography in the vents of his ceiling.
Damn.
And I was like, what the actual fuck? I was like, that's amazing. He's like, yeah, there's only 4 dogs in the entire state of Georgia. So that dog has to go like everywhere.
Well, that makes sense.
In the Northwest.
Yeah.
Like the whole, basically from Atlanta and up, that dog gets called on.
It would make sense if the dog can sniff that chemical and it alerts on a regular computer, a laptop, or anything, say in an office situation that's directly in front of or near a computer. Then if it hits again somewhere else, then they're like, hey, Scooby, let's see what snacks are over here. That's pretty ingenious.
Yeah, sniffed, found them in like the air vent of the ceiling, pulled it down and found like this dude had like terabytes of child pornography, which is fucking scary to think.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So back to Mikey the Perv.
Sorry.
That's okay. That is pretty interesting, though. I had no idea that you could train a dog to do that.
I didn't either.
So Mikey the Perv, they seize his computer, and among the other nasty shit that was on his computer, like child pornography movies, and there was a short snuff film that showed a man dying. Old Mikey had communications with another man that he thanked for sending him said snuff film. Mikey and this other piece of shit frequently chatted with each other, and Mikey would go as far as to call the other guy his mentor. Sick ass. So this guy tells Mikey that he is a sexual sadist and he had killed a number of boys/men. One of the stories this man told was he was at Walmart the other day and he spotted something that reminded him of something he had done. This guy is purposefully trying to be cryptic. He says he was reminded of something that's missing. He says it was not really missing. It was just never returned. He said he had a great fondness and memories of it. He goes on to say that the thing with most prey is that they are not worth looking for. It was a runaway, or so it told him. Again, they are referring to prey as in young men, young boys. He goes on and says that they are just throwaways. No one gives a shit. While this piece of shit is chatting with Mikey, and when he was talking about something that wasn't really missing, it was just never returned. The it was determined that he was talking about seeing a missing persons flyer for Branson Perry at Walmart. So further in their conversation, this piece of shit tells Mikey that he picked it up hitchhiking on the interstate. It told him he was from Skidmore, Missouri. The two partied together drinking, and he gave it a pill. The combo of the pill and the alcohol made it most compliant. So this piece of shit took it out to a remote location that he referred to as a campsite. There, he strips it, ties it to a tree, and tortured it physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually until it begged him to kill it.
Damn.
Yeah, this piece of shit said that these were activities that he had done before, and his favorite part of these activities was breaking the it. Afterward, he said he burned all of the clothing, and according to people who have seen the chat log between Mikey and this piece of shit, he was very descriptive about destroying the clothing and other evidence. He said he eviscerated it so the body would not float or bloat, and tossed the guts into a ditch and the body into deep water. He described the area simply as an Ozarks overnight stay that has and that this little project that he did to it took him 18 hours. And yes, I'm trying to be as vague as possible because this is not something I want in my head.
No, definitely not.
So the FBI tracked down this piece of shit, and he was from Fulton, Missouri. Now, Fulton is about 250 miles southeast of Skidmore. The FBI did a search and seizure at the man's home, work, and vacation property, which was described as a campsite with a trailer on it. They also searched and seized his vehicle. During the searches, they uncover a plethora of child porn on his home and work computers, along with bondage items. These bondage items are devices most people would refer to as torture tools. Now, these so-called devices were found in the trailer at this campsite. This man is arrested, and the FBI are looking for evidence of any crimes that this piece of shit may have committed. More specifically, they were looking for evidence that he killed and concealed the body of Branson Perry. What they find in relation to Branson Perry's case is a leather necklace with beads and a turtle's claw on it. This necklace is shown to Branson's parents, and his father, Bob, says that the necklace they showed him is identical to the one Branson had. Asterisk, it is not one of a kind. It is mass-produced. So keep that in mind. Now, yes, I have purposely referred to this piece of shit as a piece of shit because I don't want to give him any more airtime than he deserves. And regardless of my feelings towards this piece of shit, his name is Jack Wayne Rogers, a 59-year-old business owner and resident of Fulton, Missouri. He owned and operated Decker & Decker Employment Services in Columbia, Missouri. He is also an ordained He's also an ordained Presbyterian lay minister, and I know this is a shocker, he was a Boy Scout leader. He had already been convicted of child porn charges before, so how he was allowed to be involved with a church and the Boy Scouts is a fucking travesty. So CBS News out of Columbia, Missouri says that, quote, a former church minister and Boy Scout leader who cut off another man's genitals in a makeshift gender reassignment surgery in a hotel room pled guilty to first-degree assault and practicing medicine without a license. I am not making this shit up. Hang on. That goes on to say Jack Wayne Rogers, age 59 of Fulton, Missouri, admitted he performed the grisly operation. The judge followed the recommendation of prosecutors, sentencing Rogers to 17 years in prison for assault and 7 years for illegal surgery. The prison time is to run concurrently with a 30-year sentence handed to Rogers after he pled guilty to child pornography and obscenity charges. Rogers promised the victim he'd remove his genitals in a 4-hour operation. That time passed. Complications developed and bleeding refused to stop. The victim says, air quotes, she didn't feel like a victim at first, but changed her mind after prosecutors presented her with Rogers' checkered criminal history that was peppered with allegations of cannibalism and a pornography collection that included photographs of severed genitals. Quote, I didn't know his motivations when I went into it. I was under a lot of emotional distress and it seemed like there was no alternative, end quote. Rogers' public defender said she advised her client to plead guilty to avoid further prison time. Quote, he is getting concurrent time. If he had gone to trial, he very well could have gotten consecutive time or the death penalty, end quote. Now, Jack Wayne Rogers is still being investigated in the torture and killing of Skidmore man Branson Perry, who disappeared in April of 2001. Now, that was the article released by CBS News in Columbia. Now, Rogers denied killing Branson Perry, and he's never been charged with anything in relation to Branson's disappearance. He said his writings and discussions on the chat board and the message forums were works of fictions, fantasies that he lived out online. Branson's mother attended Jack Wayne Rogers' trial. Every chance she got, she begged him to tell her where he hid Branson's remains. And this piece of shit never would look at her. Sadly, Branson's father, Bob, died in 2004, and his mother, Becky, died in 2011. Branson has never been located. Now, in Branson's mother's obituary, it is noted that her son, Branson Perry, predeceased her. So even though no remains have been found, Becky, who had cancer and knew she was going to pass, went to her grave knowing in her heart that Branson was not alive. Foul play is suspected in Branson's case, and that is law enforcement's official statement. Retired Sheriff of Nottoway County, Ben Espy, is like Sheriff Grady from Florida, but much older. He don't give two shits about the press, and when he's asked a stupid question, he purposely stares at them until the reporter becomes uncomfortable. Now, Sheriff Espy knew that Branson's mother, Becky, was dying from her battle with cancer. And as the end drew near for Becky, Sheriff Espy wanted to offer her some kind of answers while she was still coherent. He said, my job is to investigate these cases. I, however, do not make arrests. I do not prosecute people. It is the prosecutor's job to tell me who to arrest and who to convict in court. The lead with Jack Wayne Rogers that looked extremely promising came about within a couple of years of the investigation. Sheriff Espy said basically what was going on was his office was going to follow every lead and every tip that came in, especially the Jack Wayne Rogers angle. He went on to tell Becky that at the very beginning, very early on in Branson's case, they knew exactly what happened to Branson. They knew who was responsible, but they just couldn't put together the evidence due to not being able to locate and recover Branson's remains. He went on to say that he knew that Branson Perry was no angel. He was not a saint. He was a good kid, but later in life he got mixed up with the wrong crowd and he was involved in some of the drug manufacturing and peddling that was going on at the small local level in Skidmore. But he never deserved to not come home. After he retired, Sheriff Espy went on record saying that Branson Perry was shot in the head and was buried somewhere. He said that at least 2 people are responsible for the murder of Branson Perry, and he believes that he believes and has evidence that will show that approximately 9 people are either involved or aware or know exactly what happened in Branson's case. These are all people on the local level, and that everything leads back to Skidmore, Missouri's drug scene. Over the years, they've gone to several locations and done excavations looking for the remains. I truly believe if they could have found those remains, or if they can find those remains, they could bring Branson's case to court. So in the end, we have Branson being murdered, not by that piece of shit in Fulton, Missouri, but by a group of individuals who were into the small-time drug manufacturing and selling in Skidmore. The sheriff's department knows who is responsible for Branson's murder. They have gone as far as to say that not only do we know who's responsible, but we also know who else is involved. We know that he was buried at some point. And we also have evidence and reason to believe that at some point they went and moved the body. Sheriff Espy was able to tell Becky all of what I just told you before she passed away, and he believed that even though they couldn't bring charges against these individuals, that they owed her the truth. And that's where I started the thing when this guy's a stand-up guy. For him to go to a mother and say, look, I can't prove it in court because I don't have his remains, but I've got everything else, and I want you to know this is exactly what happened. He didn't have to do that. So, as for a theory in Branson's case, it makes the most sense once you start looking at this that there was a task force a couple of years before Branson went missing that was, they said it was like a drug task force that they had gotten some people to be informants for. And rumor got out that Branson had talked and got somebody arrested. And then the day that he went missing, he walked to see someone at one of those drug manufacturing houses and saw a bunch of drugs and was told where they were going to be selling them and stuff like that. And then someone ratted on Branson and said, hey, man, you might not want to say that in front of him. He's the one that ratted out so-and-so. And they dealt with it that way. Now, the prosecutor for Nottoway County and the sheriff's department are not the best of friends. That prosecutor was on the job maybe a month or two when Ken Rex McElroy was killed. And then he was also still the county prosecutor when Branson went missing 20, 30 years later. But like Sheriff Espy said, it's not his job to prosecute people. It's his job to collect evidence and present it to the prosecutor. The prosecutor is supposed to make the recommendation to go to trial or not. The prosecutor is on record stating that his job is not to just take people to trial willy-nilly. His job is to prosecute people for crimes that he can prove that a crime was committed. And so that, ladies and gentlemen, is the case of Branson Perry. They did some excavations, and I said that earlier. They had gotten like 2 or 3 tips from people that didn't know each other that Branson was buried out on a local farm. So they go and dig it up. And when I mean they dig it up, I mean they're digging down. They bring in 3 cadaver dogs, start them 2 miles out. They all converge on the same point. They take them 5 miles out. Walk them back, they converge on the same point. All 3 hit on the same point, so they dig that area up. Sheriff Espy states in a interview that as they're digging, you can tell the soil has been disturbed, and then it goes into basically compacted soil where it's never been disturbed again. So he felt like the cadaver dogs hit on the scent of a body being there or something decaying there, and whatever that something was had been moved. The other rumor is that he was killed as a retaliation for him ratting someone out, and that they dismembered him and strewn his parts up and down the river. But anyway, now recommendation time, because Coach and I are...
What do you think what happened? The whole point is for us to give our opinions, man.
Okay, so here's my personal...
Everyone wants to know what we think. You're just giving facts now.
My personal opinion is...
Come on, bro.
My personal opinion is he walked down to the corner gas station to get something to drink to get away from the eyes of Gina, and he either found drugs that he forgot he stashed in that cabinet, and he was going to go take them to somebody to hold, and that somebody knew that it was rumored that Branson had ratted somebody else out, picked him up, and that's the end of it.
But how far away is the store? Do we know?
From where he was at, it's like 6 blocks, so half a mile, 3/4 of a mile.
All right, so it's doable.
Yeah, he's not, and April in Northwest Missouri, it's not hot at all. If anything, it may be a little chilly. I will say this, the Nottoway River that flows through town, that son of a bitch freezes so bad that chunks of ice flow down it. And I mean chunks of ice that you could probably ride. But anyway, I digress. So what's your theory?
I don't know, man. I don't know if he would make it to the store or not. I'd like the idea of him just gone. You know, he just walked out and disappeared into the ether of, just blinked out of existence. But I think most likely, is either somebody came up on the property and saw him, or he himself walked off the property and he was snatched up and dealt with. I think that's probably most likely what happened, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't. All right, so here's the thing, and we're going to shit on this, and we're going to do a post-brew hangover to thoroughly shit on this. There is a documentary, 5-6 episodes on Sundance Channel called No One Saw a Thing. 3.5 episodes deal with Ken Rex McElroy. And then the last 2.5, deal with 2 other cases that happened there. And they're brutal. One case, and I can't remember her last name. And this is where I talked about them having a severe meth problem. Where's it at? I know I sent it to you. Damn it. All right, Wendy Gillenwater. Wendy Gillenwater basically dated this guy. I don't know his name. It's not relevant at this point. He is a grade A piece of shit too. He was strung out on meth. He used to beat the shit out of her, and just for shits and giggles. But they said what happened was he was in a meth rage, and he beat the life out of her. He broke 8 ribs on one side, 6 on the other.
Damn.
And literally stomped her to death. And as she's gasping for air, he pours Dawn dish detergent in her mouth. I mean, it's awful. Okay. And he's arrested. He's serving life, maybe on death row. Hopefully he gets the ride to lightning. Fast forward, you have another case of Bobby Joe Stinnett, and Bobby Joe's case was real famous when it happened back in 2004. She was murdered, and a lady cut her 8-month fetus out of her and stole the baby.
Good Lord. I remember that. That was awful.
Yes. This all goes down in Skidmore. And so that documentary, No One Saw a Thing, tries to tell you the town is cursed because they killed poor innocent Ken Rex McElroy. They never talk about all the shit that he did for 20 years in that town. Was it right that vigilante justice was doled out? No, it's not right. Vigilante justice is not right. However, when you go to the cops, as often as that town did, and tell them that he's terrorizing them and the cops won't do anything, and he's walking around with 39 felonies and never served a day of time in jail, people get fed up with shit.
Yeah, something's got to give at some point. Right.
And in the documentary, at the very end, there's an old man that's a farmer that's been there forever, and I like that old bastard, and he's impartial, says one of the guys, because supposedly there's 3 different shooters in Ken's story. One of the guys, I can't remember his name, wound up drinking himself to death several years after Ken died, which could be associated with the guilt of taking a life. I totally get that. Okay. But here's the thing. They're saying that whole documentary makes you believe that the county or the town dried up because they killed this guy in broad daylight. No one saw a thing. No one saw a thing. No one would come forward. Here's the thing. It is a small town. At its heyday, had 440 people in it. It's a farming community. There's no industry at all. And as farms dry up, they lose they don't support the local economy. And so there's now not a grocery store. There's no longer a gas station, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think the town's cursed. And the way I kind of explained it to my wife was, I can take any small town across the country, and if I remove vigilante justice of killing the town bully, I can find you a town just about anywhere that's had 3 or 4 shitty situations or deaths. And it's so much more newsworthy because they never let the killing of Ken McElroy die. They would go back year after year, 10th anniversary, 20-year anniversary, 50-year anniversary, which we ain't got there yet, but we're closing in on it. But anyway, so I recommend that if you want to hear more about the Gillenwater case, Bobby Joe Stinnett, and Branson Perry's case, they do a decent job with those 3 cases. But that's the only thing good I can say about it. And the one episode they talk about Branson's case, they do interview Sheriff Espy. And that leads into Bobby Joe's case about her baby being stolen. So it was worth that. But I told Coach off air, it was so bad. My blood pressure got so high that I was like, fuck it. I cut it off like 2 or 3 times because they're just flat out not telling you the whole story. And I equated it to the Dateline episode on Rebecca Gould. That was one-sided. So I can't tell you I wonder how many documentaries, how many Datelines, how many 48 hours I've watched where they only told one side of the story, and that's not even a tenth of what actually happened. But anyway.
Yeah, like that. I've been a victim of that a few times with some incidents that one in particular that it went semi-viral when I was at a high school, and the people that reported on it just told one side, and I was like, holy crap, that is nowhere near what happened. It's like, so yeah, when you see something like that, it makes you think, how much media have I consumed that was literally just telling me half or less of the story? It's scary, honestly. But I'm going to recommend BuzzFeed Unsolved. This was one of the videos I watched on Ken Rex McElroy, and I've watched them for several years, and I would recommend their YouTube page. Pretty good when you got money behind you. You can make pretty good,
I agree.
Pretty good content when somebody's bankrolling you.
Yeah, now I think right after Ken was killed, Brian Dennehy did the made-for-TV movie. He played Ken.
Yeah.
But then there's another remake. I don't remember what it's called. Well, I think I still got it pulled up. Hold on, let's see if I do.
Called Roadhouse.
Yeah, that too. Where no one saw a thing. All right, so Ari Belkin is the one that is the filmmaker behind No One Saw a Thing. And he's an idiot. I'm just going to tell you. They also I thought it said in here where I don't know. I will say this about it. When Ken's case went down, there was a ton of press coverage. And I think that's when 60 Minutes was just getting started, and Maury Safer is there in Skidmore and he's interviewing everybody. And so it does give you a glimpse back at what the town looked like then. Now it's basically a ghost town. I think the 2 gas stations are closed. But it does start off with that documentary starts off with the little clip that I played at the beginning of our episode on Ken. And that guy that you hear in the little clip that I played, he's a character. So while I am shitting on how they did it, you can tell there was money behind it, and they did a hell of a job getting the old archival footage, but they just only tell, they don't even tell the whole story. But anyway, so I don't recommend that you watch it based on trying to learn more about Ken McElroy. You're not going to. What you will learn about is how facts can be thrown around and misconstrued. So if you wanted to, like I said, I guess it's a quasi recommendation because they do a good job covering those other 3 cases, including Branson's. But anyway, and that's all I got to say about that. So we are down to inside 24 hours before I'm playing Alice Cooper.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, buddy. Rolling like a big shot. Like I said, I'm going to try to give myself fishing elbow, not tennis elbow this summer. With that also said, again, we opened up with it. I want to close with it. Our hearts, thoughts, and prayers go out to everyone affected by the tornadoes in Kentucky last week and the ones that rolled through Arkansas, which by the time you hear this will be last week. Kentucky will be 2 weeks ago. Severe weather is supposed to roll through our area this evening. So y'all stay safe. Y'all stay safe out there. Hunker down. Coach, you got anything else?
Man, you know I don't.
Deuces.